So whenever you're ready.
Okay. As many of you may or may not be aware, Bruce, the owner of Finn's, adopted all of his children, I being one of them. I was discovered at the age of 11. Throughout my childhood, I was considered an unaccompanied youth. I lived in hotels, motels, on the streets, in cars, and occasionally, if I was lucky, I lived with my grandma and my uncle. From the age of 5 to 11, I took care of my biological mother and my 2 younger brothers. Sorry.
That's a good start, really good. The connection is there. We want to hear the rest of the story.
Yeah. So my mom, she had her ups and downs. When she was up, she was very manic and all over the place. She was addicted to drugs, and there was times where she would completely disappear and I didn't know when she was coming back home. My job was to take care of my brothers and make sure that they were safe, as well as myself and us getting to school. We moved all the time, and I don't know if people really understand that with unaccompanied youth, they're constantly moving. Every year I had a different school. It was hard to keep track of me. I wasn't discovered, like I said, until I was 11, and it wasn't from lack of trying. We had social services come in often, but when you're a child and you're scared for your life, you learn how to lie. You're surviving. And my mom actually, she trained us what to say and what not to say. So whenever we had these surprise visits, we knew what to do, and we had a great family when people were watching, but that was not the case. I remember about a year before I finally got discovered, I was walking with my mom. We were walking down the street, and she was in one of her manic states, and we were walking past a church, and it's funny now that I'm thinking about it, but the situation was very scary. We were walking past a church, and a police officer had left the cop car running. I don't know where he was. I think he was in the church, but she told me that it was God's will for her to go and stop crime. So I am 10 years old, and I have to convince my mom that it is not God's will for her to steal a cop car and go stop crime. Luckily, I learned very young how to distract her when she was in her manic states. I knew that her mind was always all over the place. So I distracted her, and we went and got my brothers. But that's what my life was. My life was a constant state of not knowing what my mom was going to do next, or if she was going to come home, and how I could protect my brothers and feed them. A month before we got taken away was probably towards the worst of it, because she completely refused to take her medication. So when you're dealing with somebody who has issues with drug abuse and mental issues, they don't want to take their medication, and they don't want to take their medication because it doesn't make them feel good. So she wouldn't. And when she was in her manic states, she, like I said, she would disappear for a really long time, and she was a danger to herself and to us. And then in her depressive states, she would be on the floor for days. Like, I couldn't get her to move. I couldn't get her to do anything. And the month before we were taken, it was really, really bad. And honestly, I don't know if we would have been discovered if it hadn't been for my brother's preschool teacher she just came. It was a surprise visit, and she came and she saw the condition of the house, and she realized that we were in danger. And I had been lying actually to my brother's preschool. I told them I was 13. I was 11. And it was so that I can get my brother off the bus during the day. But I don't think the community understands that a lot of times it's actually safer for these kids not to go back to the home. A lot of times they're coming from places where they're being physically, mentally, and even sexually abused. And I was 11 when I got discovered, but honestly, if I hadn't been placed in Bruce's house, I honestly don't know where I would have been. He gave me hope, and it took me a year to trust him, a good year. And it was because every adult I knew failed me. Every adult put my life in danger and put my brother's life in danger, and so I didn't trust him. And that's the same situation with these kids in our community. They don't trust you, and they have every right not to trust you. The nice thing with the 5 Cities Homeless Coalition, however, is that specific counselor, he goes out, he finds these kids, he develops trust with them, he's constant with them, so they know like he's not just going to disappear on them, and he gives them these resources. So it allows these kids to see that, yeah, life is really bad for them now, but it doesn't always have to be, and that there are ways that life could get better for them. There are resources, there's help, there's hope out there for them. Like for me, if I didn't have the hope or the help, I just don't know where I would be now. And I'm successful. I'm a pediatric nurse. I'm proud of where I was and what I've done, where I've come from. But honestly, if I didn't have somebody out there looking out for me, I don't know what I would have done. Same situation with these kids. Like, it's really, what we do as a community coming together for these kids is so important. And we might not be able to see it, but it's real and it's out there. And we have about 150 accounted for. I guarantee that there are a lot more. We just haven't discovered them yet. And again, it's because they're out there surviving, and they're gonna lie. They're gonna pretend that they're okay. They're gonna hide. But what we're doing for this community is wonderful. It really is. I hope everybody understands that even though we might not always have a story for you, it's their personal struggles, and it's real and it's happening, but we're giving them resources and we're letting them know that their life, what they do from now on, is what they decide.